Welcome to the Alternative Leader podcast. My name is Mary Williams and I'm the Mind Architect. I'm also founder of the Alternative Leader Academy and author of It Begins With You. This podcast is dedicated to inspiring the leaders of today to lead with intention, both in their personal and their professional lives. My guests from across the world share their challenges, their knowledge and their experiences so that we can learn from these powerful insights to help us lead with strength, determination and compassion. Welcome to the Alternative Leader podcast. My name is Mary Williams and I'm really excited to have an ex-client, I'm going to say stroke friend with me today, Peter Snellgrove Hawkins, which I have to say, I do love your surname. I've always loved your surname. And Peter has an absolutely fascinating story stroke tale of sort of going into depression and coming out of it. And I think that your journey is absolutely fascinating. And I think that the reflections that you have to offer are just absolutely incredible. And I want to share those with people because depression isn't something that a few of us have. It's something that a lot of us have. And you know, I think it's really important that people recognize that this is, you know, in some terms normal and it's okay. So a very kind of short introduction there.
That's good.
There we go. We'll go with that. And I'm wondering where to ask you to start, really. I mean, where would you start with it?
I think on and off, I've suffered from depression most of my life. It's manifested itself in different ways, in different circumstances. But I think that if we just concentrate on my last bout, if you like, which was started about 3.5 years ago, caused by breakdown of marriage, poor relationship with children and so on. And I think because of the severity of it, that's why I sought help rather than trying to battle through it.
So what was different about that time than all the other times?
I think because I got in such a bad place that I couldn't see my way out of it at all. It was very much, you know, it's nicknamed the big black dog or the black cloud was just permanently over me, and I couldn't see any way of any point of existing anymore. It was, and I think because I could self-criticize, I could see that I was perhaps beating myself up wrongly and not being able to see a way out of it, but I just didn't know how to. So that's why I needed, and I did call for help.
When you talk about it feeling like a big black cloud, can you be more descriptive even? Like how did that manifest itself on a day-to-day basis?
I think at one point I was sleeping stupid amounts. I tried to get up to go out, and I couldn't remember how to get dressed. And the whole process of getting dressed took probably about 3 hours. Right. And that's crazy. That's not functioning at all. You know. I can laugh about it now, but at the time it was awful.
You can, and I know that you can laugh about it, which is why I'm laughing about it with you. I want you to dig deeper into that because I know that there's people who I certainly see who feel ashamed of how low they get.
Yeah.
You know, I have a client at the moment who also struggles to get out of bed and then can be awake for, you know, days on end. And there's a lot of shame attached to it as well, I think.
Yeah, and I think having come out the other side of it now, I think I want to this is a great opportunity to share my story, and B, hope that someone picks it up and thinks that they've got a chance as well. I was very much of that ilk. I thought it dreadful that I, supposedly an intelligent man, was under the pressure of this. And I, once coming out the other side, I wrote a short piece of writing with prose about my experience, and I published it at work to share it, because nobody was doing that. Everybody was, but I felt that the more we could get the story out, it might benefit other people. And subsequently, other people have done the same. They've come out and talked about their experiences, and it's quite surprising. Oh, them! Oh, God! You just don't know. No. And I think by trying to make it more open, then that removes the shame.
It's a funny thing, isn't it? And I know it's a cliche, but it is, my daughter often says, and I was saying, to you earlier, my eldest has bipolar. And, she often says, with any physical injury, we're totally happy to talk about it. Any physical issue, I was joking with a friend, recently about, maybe I've got cancer, or maybe I've got this, or, we're open to talking about the kind of psychological aspects of how we feel physically. But when we actually truly think that there's something mentally unwell, wrong, whatever your language is that you use about it, we clam up, don't we? And we don't want to talk about it at all, because we see it as if this is not working well for me, I am broken. There is something wrong with me. It's interesting, isn't it, how we make that differentiation between the physical and the mental.
Yeah, I think an awful lot of it is the unseen illness. People with an arm, you break your leg, you got a cast on. People go, "Oh, dearie," You can't see depression. You can't. There's an awful lot of mental illness that you can't see. And I think a lot of people who perhaps haven't had the experience, are scared. They're scared to say, "Are you all right?"
Yeah.
They're scared of, a lot of the people, you see loads of people every day or whatever it is, you say, "Oh, good morning, how are you?" How often does somebody turn around and go, "Actually, do you know what? I'm really fed up."
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't happen.
I'm not having a good day.
Yeah. So I try. When people ask me, say, if I'm feeling down, I would say, "I'm sorry, I'm just a bit naffed off today."
Yeah. It's really interesting. I posted something or commented on somebody else's post on LinkedIn a couple of months back, and almost immediately got a connection request and accepted it. And then the man who connected to me just said, "Can I ask if you're okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." And he said, "Oh, good. I've just been on a suicide awareness course, and something you said triggered me." And
wow.
And I said, "Oh, genuinely, I'm fine. I'm actually a therapist." And I said, not that precludes me, I might add, from not being fine. But I said to him, "Could you tell me what it was that I commented? What did I say that made you think that?" And he immediately went into clear embarrassment. I was like, "Gosh, I'm so sorry. And, I didn't mean to, shouldn't have said anything, whatever." And I said, "No, categorically you should. What you saw was somebody else that you thought might be in trouble. And you reached out." And I said, never apologize for doing that. I actually feel kind of warmed, that you've cared enough to ask me. And I am fine, but the next person might not be." Yeah. And I thought it was rather lovely, actually. I've never, ever had that happen before. And he couldn't say what it was. And I was kind of trying to find the comment to think, "Oh, what did I say?" And I think what it was is actually I was talking about my experience as a therapist and seeing clients. And he obviously, it triggered him. And but I thought it was rather lovely that actually
there are some good people out there.
Yeah, and asked. So thinking back to that kind of latest bout, obviously you said you've always kind of been depressive on and off.
Yeah.
Where do you think that's come from?
I can only attribute it to my upbringing. I was adopted by people, in my opinion, that perhaps shouldn't have had children.
And when you look back, and obviously, you and I, with you being a client, we've shared a lot about that upbringing. What do you think was the real piece that you as a child took from that upbringing that led to the depression in the longer term?
Never been good enough. Always, such and such has done so well and you haven't. And, that constant at you all the time, it gets to you. And you start not believing in yourself. And certainly as a teenager, I just didn't believe in anything. I had no confidence at all.
And so when did it first become a real problem for you?
I think in my mid-20s was my first real big bout. I stopped eating. I was drinking heavily. I just couldn't deal with the world. But that was quite a short-lived episode. I was living in London, I think. I was just about to move to London. It was just all going horribly wrong. But I managed to get a job up in Yorkshire, and that changed my life.
Why did it change your life?
It's just London's very lonely. Yorkshiremen, or Yorkshire people, I should say, in general, they don't let you be lonely. They're a chatty bunch.
and actually, that's an interesting thing to explore, isn't it? Is about the loneliness aspect of it, because not only do you have something that you think other people don't have, you also have something which makes you feel shameful, and you also have something which you think isolates you from other people. And makes you feel not good enough. So there's this awful downward spiral, isn't it? If you add all those things together, there's a terrible downward spiral where you're not speaking out. And you're not saying anything to anyone. So you're very likely, actually, most people withdraw in that situation. So they withdraw from things. So what happened, what was the effect of of not being allowed to be lonely in Yorkshire? How did that change you? You just said change my life.
From the minute I moved there, I was just looked after. Not for the boss I had at the time, who was really personal chap, helped me find accommodation for myself, and I just felt included immediately from being there. Found a nice pub that I liked and got to know people, and it was good times.
And so that's interesting, isn't it, when we reflect on what you said, because what you said was that you felt not good enough by your own family. And actually then what happened was a group of people coming around you, basically saying you're worth it.
Yeah, I think you're right, because your lands, they don't know you from Adam. So that was a good boost for my confidence.
So what did it teach you? What did it teach you about yourself at that point?
I'm
pushing you here.
Of course. What did it teach me? I suppose it was just having a little bit of self-worth, having a little bit of, this is a chance here. It did me good. It brought us eventually, by moving to Yorkshire, is what brought me to Cambridge, because the same business I was in after I'd been in Yorkshire for a couple of years. I did 3 years running a pub in Sheffield, and then that brought me to running a pub in Cambridge. So you can't be a shrinking violet when you run a pub. You've got to be full of yourself. So from the shy me that moved to Yorkshire turned me round into being, and I can still be awkward in company, because I think anybody can. But the older I'm getting, the more I just think, oh, sod it, I am who I am, like it or lump it, So,
Did you see, it's interesting that you ran a pub, because, quite often I know a lot of people I've spoken to who've been depressed, drinking has been a key component of that. So
Yeah.
did you see any of that as a pub landlord?
Well, in myself,
In
or
others as
drinking?
well?
I saw some terrible states. I had one of my regulars that used to come in, self-confessed alcoholic. He would go to the clinic or whatever and have his dose of whatever it was to stop him drinking. But he'd found that if he drank a certain cider, but this stuff was 7 point something %.
Wow.
So he would drink that at lunchtime. I presume he's dead now. He was, yeah.
It's sad, isn't it? That
it is.
We don't have a society where we reach out earlier.
I think it's changing. Well, I hope it's changing, put it that way. I don't really go into pubs that often these days, so I don't see it so much. But you'd like to think these days that someone would actually say, "Oi, you all right?"
Yeah. I think it is interesting, isn't it? Because I think it is a big difference between male depression and female depression. All kind of other genders aside,
right?
To keep it simple, is that women tend to chat. Women do tend to say to their friends, "Yeah, I'm having a hard day," or they call because they're having a hard day. And from my experience working with clients, it seems to take women a lot longer to retract into, I'm sleeping a day or I'm not seeing anyone, into that more lonely environment than it does men. It seems to be something men almost do, fast when they're feeling low. Like you said, almost that I'm a bright, intelligent person. I should be able to manage this myself. And therefore I'm going to keep out of the way of everybody else. I'm going to sort this out myself. Whereas women almost tend to do the opposite and go, "I'm having a rubbish day. I'm going to call a friend."
Yeah.
And it's sad, isn't it? Because actually, I certainly know the men I come across in my life, not only as clients, but friends and family, they are very much open to those conversations now.
Yeah, I think it has changed. I've got lifelong friends that know my history. And I will tell them if I'm in a bad place, and they look out for it. And that's quite something when you've had a friend of nearly 40 years or whatever, and they pick the phone up and just say, "Just checking in, you're right."
You're still
and
there.
that would never have happened 20 years ago.
No.
Even 10 years ago, I don't think.
What do you think the difference has been?
I think it's, from my point of view, it's my openness about it. I think in general, mental health awareness has been brought to the front by people like Stephen Fry, who we lost Robin Williams to depression, which was just tragic. But again, it brought it to the fore in people's minds. So I think there's an awareness that perhaps there wasn't.
And I agree. I think
we can actually thank the media for something.
I agree, and I think you're right. It's people speaking out, and I think hearing the statistics about suicide in men, and how suicide being the biggest killer of men under, I think it's 45. It's just horrendous. That's a horrendous statistic. And I know, I have an amazing plumber that is, one of my great friends, really. We got to talking about it one day, and he was saying 5 of his friends had committed suicide.
Jeez.
And he's one person. And he said not one of them said anything, not one of them reached out because, kind of obviously felt that it wasn't acceptable to do so. Yeah,
I've known 3. And I think I learned a lesson. I was 18 and I was working with this guy who was 5 years older than me. 17, 18 years old. You know nothing about the world. Or I'd certainly put my hands up to admit that I didn't. We had a conversation, a long conversation. It lasted all the shift together. sort of almost in a jocular fashion of what do you reckon the best way to kill yourself would be? And we concluded that whichever way it was a hose pipe in a car. And he did it that night.
Gosh.
And, that's a lesson. That's just going back to me for a minute. When I was in my sort of deepest, darkest place and considered taking that route, two things stopped me. One, the major one was I didn't want my children to find me. How a parent could do that to their kids. So that, and the memory of this guy, it was just awful.
And I think it's one of those things, isn't it, that in a lot of cases, actually, when people do take their own lives, it's not premeditated. I remember, watching a very fascinating documentary once, and it talked to people who had tried and failed. Some of them had been left disabled by how they had chosen to do that. And a lot of them said, they knew they were low, they knew they felt down, but there was just like a spontaneous moment where they went, do you know what, I'm just going to, chuck myself off that bridge, or I am going to just do this. And that they hadn't premeditated it. And I think, secondary to that, I think that piece, I know as a parent, I feel the same, like, how do you understand somebody doing that? But I think it's important to remember, isn't it, that in that moment, that parent is taking what they almost deem to be a loving decision to say, their child is better off without me. And that shows us how low that person has got, to be able to think that is the best solution out, isn't it? And I think it's so tough.
And we lost a colleague just over a year ago, who we knew had problems, but he lost the battle and took his own life. Absolutely tragic. Lovely bloke, everybody loved him, but it wasn't enough.
And that's
so
the thing about
sad.
getting help, isn't it, really, is to reach out when you get to that point, to say, I'm at a point where I can't do this alone, and I can't do it myself, and I kind of don't even know what it is that I'm meant to be doing to try and resolve this.
That's how we ended up meeting.
So going back to that period where you felt low, that was the time when you came to see me. And you were kind of, I remember that time, you were like, I just don't want to feel like this anymore. Help me get out of it. What for you, what was the thing that helped you get out of it? Not, kind of not sort of talking about how I'm amazing, but what was the change in your mindset for you?
I think it was, looking back, I remember one of the first exercises we did, which was looking at one of my earliest memories, which was my mother belting 10 bowls of what's out of me. And I couldn't get rid of that image. And we did an exercise and we looked at that and we tried to manipulate my memory of that. And that has stuck with me. And it hasn't taken away the fact that it happened. And it wasn't very nice, but it has actually put a twist on it that it doesn't matter now. I can put it away. It's almost, if you like, filed in the do not disturb memories because it's rubbish. But I think that starting to believe that I could be okay again. And it's been a bloody long battle. I'd only say in the last 6 months that I've really got over it.
And ultimately, what we're doing is we're looking at reframing that sense of, I'm not good enough. I mean, that's what it comes down to at the core, is that from being a young boy, you learn I'm not good enough. I almost kind of, what's the point of me being here? And the work is, around, taking that away, because of course you should be here, and of course you're lovely. And I always used to say to you, I remember this, I always used to say, I really look forward to seeing you, not that I don't look forward to most of my clients, but you're always smiling and you've always got this bubbly personality. And I think it is interesting because actually I can imagine that a lot of people maybe who don't know your story but know you, if they were to listen to you talking about it, would do that kind of, really, because you don't have what we assume to be the kind of depressive mannerisms and countenance. You're always smiling, you're always bubbly, you're always making jokes. You're very fun to be around. And I think that's an interesting point as well, isn't it? It's almost like the kind of Disney villain, isn't it? Is that, we know a villain because they'll have a crooked nose and, they'll be stroking a cat and, do you know what I mean? They'll have all these things. Yeah. We kind of think of depression a bit the same, I think, that, I'd spot depression really easily. And actually we don't, because people can cover it. People don't know they have it. And I think that's an interesting point, isn't it? So do you think, having had it now, you find it easier to spot in other people?
I've got to be honest, I don't think it does. Actually, I mean, I'm on the lookout because that's the kind of guy but I don't want to get in too deep with people. And I did reach out to a guy, and we didn't really know him, and he said, "Can we have lunch? I just want to have a chat." This was just after I put out my story, and I went had lunch with this guy, and he just let absolutely everything out, every problem that he got. And I advised him to best go and talk to some professional people, because I'm not qualified. But my God, that was such a responsibility that I felt I'd been given for this guy's secrets. It was very deep, and beyond my help. I just couldn't. And subsequently, I haven't had second lunch with him because I was just worried that I might give the wrong advice.
But I think that's a really interesting point, isn't it? Is that a lot of people fear they'll say the wrong thing, but actually it's better to say something rather than nothing. And actually, it's okay to say, "I totally hear you, not me, but let's signpost." And I think that's something, that I often have kind of, clients who I've known for years say, "My friend said this, or my friend said this, what should I do?" And I'll just be, that's A&E, that's the GP, yep, you can send them to me or to somebody else. And you don't have to know the answer. I guess that's the advice I would give to anyone listening. You don't have to know the answer. And you can say, wow, that is, that's heavy, and actually it's also okay for you to then say, "I need to go and dump this onto somebody else." But actually what you need right now is you need to go and speak to your GP, or you need to go and find, a therapist or whatever it is. It's okay not to have the answer. And I think sometimes people, because they're so afraid that they're going to then be expected to solve the problem, they don't ask. And I think it's really important for people to recognize that actually, you don't have to know the answer. I remember speaking to a friend of mine who had breast cancer, and I hadn't seen her in years. And, and I said to her, "Hey, how are you doing?" kind of all, full of the joys of spring. And she went, "Oh, I've got breast cancer, actually." And I just went, "Oh, that's shit, isn't it?" And we both just started laughing. And she said, "Oh my God, you're the first person who's just said how shit it is." Then everybody else is like, "Well, I'm sure you'll be fine," and blah, blah, blah. And she went, "I'm not sure I'll be fine." And she just actually needed somebody to kind of get in it with her and go, "That's shit, isn't it?"
Yes. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
And I think sometimes we need somebody to kind of step into that dark place with us and just be honest. I don't actually know what to say to you, but I'm here to help you work out who to go and see. That's just the honesty of it. So if somebody was listening to this and they were thinking, I feel that, or I feel some of that, or I know somebody who feels like that, what would your advice to them be?
Pick the phone up. Just pick the phone up. There's I mean, there's the Samaritans, there's all the cliched places to go to are there for a reason. Don't be ashamed to pick the phone up and ask for help.
And when you look back on your comment around, I'm a bright, intelligent man, and should be able to deal with this, well, how do you feel about that now?
I mean, I was in a place that was unavoidable. I don't think I could have done anything other than treat it the way that I did do. Because if I hadn't have got help, God knows where I'd be now.
Does it have anything to do with intelligence?
Probably not. Survival. No, it's a very, very difficult question to answer, isn't it? In hindsight. Yeah.
My view of it is, there's however many of us, 7.5 billion of us on the planet. We all have a right to be here. And, we have a right for things to go as well as we can get them to go. And sometimes life takes us in a different direction to that. And, I always say, it's not your fault how you got here. It's your responsibility to do something about it.
Yeah. I believe I was put on this planet for a reason. I haven't found it yet. But I suppose my epitaph, he tried to help. That's what I want.
Have you ever shared your story with your kids? How much do they know?
So my son, who's slightly older, he's 15. He's aware, but I think my daughter, who's 11, she was too young to understand. She knew that Daddy wasn't well, but she didn't really understand why. And I think that when she gets a bit older and is able to understand more, I will tell her, because I think it's important, certainly for her own well-being. I don't know whether depression is hereditary.
I think the jury's still out. That's sort of what I hear. I think certainly from my experience, obviously in my work, and I'm not, speaking sort of a blanket diagnosis, I tend to find it comes from events that have happened in childhood and what I call inherited trauma. So actually, if you grow up with a parent who has had depression and significantly through your childhood, like everything else that we do as parents, we model. And we model down to our children, a particular way of thinking. I was just speaking to a client this morning about a word that this client was using. And it was funny because the word was not generational to this client. It was not of his generation. And I just said, who used that word when you grew up? And it turned out it was a grandparent, and it just shows, how we keep these models. And so, I've had clients where they've come in saying, I'm this, or I feel like this. And they're not actually, they've just picked up that model of thinking or that model of being from their parents, everything from how loud they talk to how, what kind of aspirations they have for life. It's fascinating to me. I think, from what I understand, there are some kind of genetic components for some people. But I think for most people, if you have a childhood where you're told you're not good enough in whatever way, whatever way you're told that, it's hard to get around that because those are the very people that are meant to be telling us how wonderful we are.
And you believe them. That's the big danger with that.
Yeah.
I think, and also I found becoming a parent that I was adopting the way I was brought up as the norm. And that was a reality check. I had to really stand back and just go, what are you doing? Why are you being like this? Because it's just wrong.
Yeah.
And when I did realise it was a light bulb moment, and I turned a corner, but it was Jesus.
It's a funny one. And I can actually totally match you on that. I grew up with a mother who I think was, significantly mentally unwell, probably had bipolar, if not BPD, lots of things going on, was quite violent, quite suicidal, also very loving, at times. And, there's a joke with all my 5 children, that if I start to say anything like, well, when I was younger, they just go, no frame of reference. You have no frame of reference for normality. Your opinion does not count.
Yeah.
And often they're right. I will say something that comes from this kind of incredibly odd and strange upbringing that I had, and I laugh it off now and I say, okay, but my now opinion is this,
Yeah.
But I understand that you grow up, and I remember, I was married very young, and my first husband was much older than me, and I remember, having a conversation with him. I can't remember what it was, but something I'd done when I was growing up, and he just looked at me and said, "You do know that's not normal." And I just went, "Really?" And he went, "No, that's not normal." And the amount of times that's been repeated throughout my life, people are like, "That's not normal."
Yeah. But then, but have to say what is normal.
Yes, that's very true. That's very true. What is normal? And do we want to be normal? So,
well, yeah.
Your advice would be pick up the phone, call all the people that you're meant to call, or at least call a friend.
Yeah.
And your advice for the person on the other end of that call, let's say it is just a friend, what would your advice be?
Listen. Just encourage the story, try and get them to get the whole story out as to why they're feeling like that. Be that, it's just a crutch, really. But then, you have to point them in the right direction. Just say, look, thank you very much for sharing this, but you've got to go and get professional help. Because it's out there. It is out there.
And I think it is, it is one of those things about weighing up your own energy. And I know, there are times that, friends come to me about things and it's not a space I'm in to be able to help them even, and I will say, you need to go, I can recommend you people, off you go and speak to someone else.
Yeah.
And I think it is, I love the fact that you said listening, because that's the word that was in my head, is just listen and let people talk it through and let people talk it out. Yeah. And accept that however ridiculous you think, 3 hours to get dressed, is their reality. And, that's why they've reached out, because they recognize they are bright, intelligent people. They recognize what is not okay. But, to recognize that we don't really know much about the brain at all, and even in my line of work, we know very little really about how the brain works, Which
is quite incredible, really, when you think of the advances in science that there have been, certainly of late, where it's still a mystery.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of what makes us human, but kind of trips us up as well. I know, my youngest 2 were quite little. They're probably 8 when my daughter was diagnosed. And, I had a daughter at home that was, suicidal. We removed everything sharp from the house. The kids would go to the store and go, where have all the knives gone? It was like, oh, I've put them somewhere. And actually in the end, we were saying to them, the way that we described it was to say, your brain has all these chemicals and occasionally your sister's chemicals just, get all muddled up and get confused.
Yeah.
And it just makes her feel really sad for no reason at all. And they kind of took that on board. And so I think, that's the other thing I say is, try not to be frightened of talking about it in the same way that we talk about broken legs. This is what's happening.
Yeah, and that's where I want it to get. That's my sort of, I'm not saying that I won't have another episode in my, the rest of my days, but I hope not. I think if I've got to the point now where I can recognise triggers and I can kind of tweak things a bit so I don't. And I'm surrounded by some wonderful colleagues that support me very, very well. So I'm very lucky.
And hopefully that you realise that you are good enough.
I think so.
I think so too. Okay. So, first of all, I just wanted to say thank you, because I think it is really challenging to share that sort of deep story. And, I really appreciate, a lot of clients want to keep their confidentiality, and I really appreciate that you agreed to come on and share your story. And I truly believe that there will be people out there that will listen and not feel so alone, and hopefully take steps to get help, whether from me or anybody else. GP is a great first point of contact as well. So first of all, just
we're very lucky in our working environment. We have a sort of support company that we can ring that is provided by our lot. So the support is just there.
Yeah. And I think what I've seen in a couple of companies, which I think is wonderful, is that they have links to local therapists, local counsellors, coaches, etc., whatever you need. And what I really love about some of those companies is that you're allowed to just book yourself in. You don't have to go and ask anyone. You don't have to say anything. And actually, they don't even inform the company who you are. They will just say, one of your employees has booked in. They're having the 3 sessions, that they're allowed to have, before kind of having to request more. And sometimes just having that space to not have to say is equally important, to just have that breathing space to say, okay, I need, some sessions to deal with this. And then I'm going to be able to come and talk to you about it. Because it's not always easy to talk about it straight away, is it? When you're right in the thick of it.
No, it's not. That's another story.
It's another podcast, that is. So, that I always ask my podcast guests the same 3 questions. And so I'm going to ask you my first question, which is thinking back on those times or time. Are there books, films, or pieces of music that have helped you get through it that are significant to you?
Music, as you know, is a major part of my life. I love going to live gigs, and still do. Hopefully this year might be even allowed to go and watch somebody play a guitar. But I've picked out a couple of records. One, it's just a piece of music called Scheherazade by Rimsky-Korsakov. It's just beautiful, and I love music that creates emotion. And it can, an orchestral piece can take you to rapture, or it can take you to, real misery if you listen to melancholy stuff, which I tend to. And the second album that it's been a friend of mine since 1987, I think it is, Marillion's Misplaced Childhood. The whole album is just wonderful story. So that's my favourite one. But again, that's got some very sad bits in it that I can sort of recognise in myself. And it sort of resonates. I know it's a sort of go-to album. When I put it on, I know, hang on a minute, you're not very happy, are you? Because you're listening to it. But it helps me. Because I've seen it live. I've seen
Lovely.
So,
Thank you. What's your kind of final big takeaway for anybody listening today?
I would say, and it's very strange, you might be surprised at this, but never underestimate the power of words, of your own words.
Explain more?
Yeah, I think if you're in, and it's happened to me, and I was taken aside by someone and put rightly so, I was in a really shit place. I was really pulling everybody down around me. I didn't realise that I had any influence outside my own body. And people I was very surprised to hear actually respected what I said. So when I was saying negative things, it was having a complete negative effect on them as well. And so if you feel like, shut up, but talk in the right time in the right place to the right people about being in a bad place, just don't make the whole world miserable around you, because it really can.
Yeah.
Very easy.
I think that's actually really fascinating, because obviously, I look at leadership a lot, and, the amount of leaders who aren't aware of, it's called contagious emotion. We're humans. We are designed to tune into those around us. And actually, you can turn an entire team around very quickly using the correct positive or negative language. It's
almost like a cancer, negative cancer that just spreads. But I didn't realise that I had that sort of demeanour. That's a good word, isn't it?
I think one of the things that I notice in you, and I hope you don't mind me saying it, but I've noticed it in other people, is that kind of self-depreciation. Actually, your way of managing things is to make a joke about yourself, to bring yourself down. You kind of, I'll say it before you say it, is the model. And I remember that was something I used to pick you up on all the time. Actually, why don't we talk about the things that are great about you, rather than the things that you're worrying about and are probably not true. But when we do that around people all the time, it is draining. It is draining. That stream of negativity. So from a leadership point of view, it is, like I say in the book, it is so important that you get yourself sorted out if you're leading others as well, because you will model to them how to be.
Yeah, and it's so critical, even in just relationships in general, that you've got to be careful what you say.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, final question. If you were standing in front of the world leaders, what would be your message? I'm slightly nervous asking you this question, I think.
I'm just going to keep it to the leaders of our country at the moment. I would just say, remember that the people of this country voted you in. Don't forget them, and stop using politics to line your own pocket.
Okay, interesting. I'm not going to ask you to explain. I think that's a whole other podcast.
there's a lot of politicians. They use it for their own gain, and I think that's really wrong. When it is the people that have put an X in a box for them, and they should not turn their backs on them. I think.
I agree. I think there's a lot of politicians who are politicians because it furthers them, rather than when you look at actually the people who've been really good historically as well as now. Actually, they're in that role because they want to create change for people. And for good. And I think it's an absolutely stark difference that you can see between the ones, who come from a power model and the ones that come from a change model. It's obvious to all of us, really. Peter, thank you so much. It's so lovely to catch up with you as well after such a long time.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate it, because we talked about doing this ages ago, didn't we? Pre all of this craziness, I think we talked about doing this.
Yeah.
So
it's good to reflect. It's good to have the chance to get my story out there. Hopefully it does someone some good.
I'm sure it will. If people want to contact you, is that okay for them to do so?
Yes.
Okay. And how would they find you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I am on Facebook. I'd rather keep that to personal people.
Yeah. So LinkedIn is good.
But LinkedIn's fine, yeah.
Great. Peter, thanks so much. And so nice to catch up with you again. And hopefully we'll catch up in person at some point soon. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mary Williams, as you know, and thank you so much for listening to the Alternative Leader podcast. I search for guests to bring you lessons and learnings that can help move you forward in your life, help you achieve the success that you want to, in whatever way that shows up for you, to help you lead powerfully, whether that's in your own life, as your parenting, your personal, or your professional, and make you the best that you can be. If you've enjoyed the show, please rate and review it, and please share it with as many people as you think also want to move forward and gain success in their lives. If you want to find out more about me, go over to my website, which is www.mary-williams.com. That's www.mary, which is MARI-williams.com, and you'll find links to all of my social media profiles there. There's also a Facebook community that you can join, and again, all the links will be on the website too. I hope you have an absolutely fantastic day, and thank you so much for listening.